My highly educated dad never pressured me about my grades, but we did begin to argue about money. By the time I was 16, I was probably had a far better foundation with money than both my parents. I could keep books and I listened to tax accountants, corporate attorneys, bankers, real estate brokers, investors, and so forth. By contrast, my dad talked to other teachers. One day, my dad told me that our home was his greatest investment. A not too pleasant argument took place when I showed him why I thought a house was not a good investment. The above diagram illustrates the difference in perception between my rich dad and my poor dad. When it comes to their home, one dad thought his home was an asset, the other dad thought it was a liability. I remember when I drew the following diagram for my dad showing him the direction of cash flow, I also showed him the ancillary expenses that went along with owning the home. A bigger home meant bigger expenses, and the cash flow kept going out through the expense column. Today, people still challenge me on the idea of a house not being an asset. I know that for many people is their dream as well as their largest investment, and owning your own house or owning your own home is better than nothing. I simply offer an alternative way of looking at this popular dogma. If my wife and I were to buy a bigger, flashier house, we would realize it wouldn't be an asset. It would be a liability since it would take money out of our pockets. So here is the argument I put forth. I really don't expect most people to agree with it because your home is an emotional thing. When it comes to money, high emotions tends to a lower financial intelligence. I know from personal experience that money has ways of making every decision emotional. When it comes to houses, most people work all their lives paying for a house they never own. In other words, most people buy a new house every few years, each time incurring a 30-year loan to pay off the previous one. Even though people receive a tax deduction for interest on mortgage payment, they pay for all their other expenses with after tax dollars even after they pay off their mortgage. My wife's parents were shocked when the property taxes on their house increased to $1,000 a month. This was after they had retired, so the increase put a strain on their retirement budget and they felt forced to move. Houses do not always go up in value. I have friends who owe $1 million for a home that today would sell for far less. The greatest losses of all are those from missed opportunity. If all your money is tied up in your house, you may be forced to work harder because your money continues blowing out of the expense column instead of adding to asset column. The classic middle class cash flow. If a young couple would put more money into their asset column early on, their later years would be easier. Their asset would have grown and would be available to help cover expenses. All too often, a house only serves as a vehicle for incurring a home equity loan to pay for mounting expenses. In summary, the end results in making a decision to own a house as too expensive in lieu of starting an investment portfolio impacts an individual in at least the following three ways: loss of time during which other assets could have grown in value, loss of additional capital, which could have been invested instead of paying for high maintenance expenses related to directly to the home, loss of education. Today, too often, people count their house and its savings and retirement plan as all they have in their asset column because they have no money to invest. They simply don't invest. This caused them investment experience. Most never come with the investment world's call a sophisticated investor. And the best investment are usually first sold to sophisticated investor who then turn around and sell them to the people playing it safe. I'm not saying don't buy a house. What I'm saying is that you should understand the difference between an asset and a liability. When I want to a bigger house, I first buy assets that will generate the cash flow to buy or to pay for the house. My educated dad's personal financial statement best demonstrate the life of someone caught in the rat race. His expenses matches his income, never allowing him enough left over to invest in assets. As a result, his liabilities are larger than his assets. The following diagram on the left shows my poor dad's income statement. It's worth 1,000 words. It shows that his income and expenses are equal, while his liabilities are larger than his assets. My rich dad personal financial statement on the right reflects results of a life dedicated to investing and minimizing liabilities. Why the rich get richer? A review of my rich dad's financial statement shows why rich gets richer. The asset column generates more than enough income to cover expenses. With the balance reinvested into the asset column continues to grow, and therefore the income it produces grows with it. The results is that the rich gets richer. Why the poor or the why the middle class struggle? The middle class finds itself in a constant state of financial struggle. Their primary income is through their salary. As their wages increases, so do their taxes. Their expense tends to increase in proportion to their salary increase. Hence the phrase rat race. They treat their home as their primary asset instead of investing in income producing asset. The pattern of treating your home as an investment and the philosophy that a pay raise means you can buy a larger home or spend more is the foundation of today's debt ridden society. Increased spending throws families into greater debts and into more financial uncertainty. Even though they may be advancing in their jobs and receiving raises on a regular basis, this is high risk living caused by weak financial education. The massive loss of job in recent times proves how shaky the middle class really is financially. Company pension plans are being replaced by 401k plans. Social Security is obviously in trouble and can't be relied upon as a source of retirement. Panic has set in for the middle class. Today, mutual funds are popular because they supposedly represent safety. Average mutual fund buyers are too busy working to pay taxes and mortgages, save for their children's college, and pay off credit cards. They do not have time to study investing, so they rely on the expertise of a manager of a mutual fund. Also, because the mutual fund includes many different types of investment, they feel their money is safer because it is diversified. The educated middle class subscribes to the dogma put out by the mutual fund brokers and financial planners: play it safe, avoid risk. The real tragedy is that the lack of early financial education is what creates the risk faced by average middle class people. The reason they have to play it safe is because their financial position is tenuous at best. Their balance sheet are not balanced. Instead, they are loaded with liabilities and have no real asset that generates income. Typically, their only source of income is their paycheck. Their livelihood becomes entirely dependent on their employer. So when genuine deals of a lifetime comes along, these people can't take advantage of them because they are working so hard, are taxed to the maximum, and are loaded with debt. As I said at the start of this section, the most important rule is to know the difference between an asset and a liability. Once you understand the difference, concentrate your effort on buying income generating assets. That's the best way to get started on a path to becoming rich. Keep doing that, and your asset column will grow. Keep liabilities and expenses down so more money is available to continue pouring into the asset column. Soon the asset base will be so deep that you can afford to look at more speculative investments that may have return of 100% to infinity. $5,000 investment that are soon turned into $1 million or more. Investments that the middle class call too risky. The investments is not risky for the financially literate. If you do what the masses do, you get the following picture. As an employee who is also a homeowner, your working effort are generally as follows. You work for a company, employees make their business owners or the shareholders rich, not themselves. Your effort and success will provide for the owner's success and retirement. You work for the government. The government takes its share for your paycheck before you even see it. By working harder, you simply increase the amount of tax taken by the government. Most people work from January to May just for the government. You work for the bank. After taxes, your next largest expenses is usually your mortgage and credit card debts. The problem with simply working harder is that each of these three levels takes a greater share of your increased effort. You need to learn how to have an increased effort benefit you and your family directly. Once you have decided to concentrate on minding your own business, focusing on your effort and acquiring assets instead of bigger paycheck. How do you set goals? Most people must keep their job and rely on their wages to fund their acquisition of assets. As their assets grow, how do they measure the extent of their success? When does someone know that they are rich, that they have wealth? As well as having my own definition of assets and liabilities, I also have my own definition for wealth. Actually, I borrowed it from a man named R. Buckminster Fuller. Someone call him a quack, another call him a genius. Years ago, he got architects buzzing because he applied for a patent for something called a geodesic dome. But in the application, Fuller also said something about wealth. It was pretty confusing at first, but after reading it, it began to make sense. Wealth is a person's ability to survive so many number of days forward. Or if I stopped working today, how long could I survive? Unlike net worth, the difference between your assets and liabilities, which is often filled with a person's expensive junk and opinions of what things are worth, the definition creates the possibility for developing a truly accurate measurement. I could now measure and know where I was in terms of my goals to become financially independent. Although net worth often includes non cash producing assets like stuff you bought that now sits in your garage, wealth measures how much money your money is making and therefore your financial survivability. Wealth is the measure of the cash flow from the asset column compared with the expense column. Let's use an example. Let's say I have cash flow from my asset column of $1,000 a month. I have a monthly expense of $2,000. What is my wealth? Let's go back to Buckminster Fuller's definition. Using his definition, how many days forward can I survive? Assuming 30 days month, I have enough cash flow for half a month. When I achieve $2,000 a month cash flow from my asset, then I will be wealthy. So while I'm not yet rich, I am wealthy. Now I have income generated from asset each month that will fully cover my monthly expenses. If I want to increase my expenses, I first must increase my cash flow to maintain this level of wealth. Also know that it is at this point that I am no longer dependent on my wages. I focused on and been successful in building an asset column that has made me financially independent. If I quit my job today, I would be able to cover my monthly expenses with the cash flow from my asset. My next goal would be to have excess cash flow from my asset reinvested in to the asset column. The more money that goes into the asset column, the more my asset column grows. The more my asset grows, the more my cash flow grows. And as long as I keep my expenses less than the cash flow from these assets, I grow richer with more and more income from sources other than my physical labor. As this reinvestment process continues, I am well on my way to becoming rich. Just remember the simple observation: the rich buy assets, the poor only have expenses. The middle class buy liabilities they think are assets. So, how do I start minding my own business? What is the answer? Listen to the founder of McDonald's in the next chapter.